here's a scary idea. What if you're never able to top your favorite video game? What if you've already played the best game of your life? Well, that's a very real possibility, but I think there may be a way to get around that problem. First, we need to figure out just what made those games so special, and I think a large part of that comes down to circumstances. To illustrate this point, let me show you one of the single most important moments of my childhood. You see, now that's art. They just don't make them like this anymore. Okay, sure, I'm exaggerating a bit, but for some of you, when that sound played, memories came rushing back. Memories of sprinting home at 3 o'clock to play the newest Final Fantasy. Memories of summoning massive creatures, taking in these stunning works of art that made up the backgrounds of some of the most iconic areas in gaming. Memories of developing the strategy to beat that boss you've been stuck on for days. And through all of this, that one sound remained constant. But obviously a single sound effect isn't what made games like these special. How you played these games might be the single biggest reason they hold such a special place in your heart. I was a teenager when Fire Emblem Awakening came out, meaning I effectively had infinite time. I chose to use this time playing through Awakening 3 times in a row. It wasn't a very busy summer. Anyway, I can't exactly do that anymore. When a new game comes out that's anything longer than 10 hours, it's gonna take me at least a month to finish it. I just don't have the free time that I used to, and I'm not unique in this regard. There are times in life when the circumstances align perfectly and allow you to enjoy a game far more than you would have been able to otherwise. But there's a glaring issue here. You can't replicate those moments. I can only go through my first breakup and spend 150 hours drowning my sorrows in Xenoblade 2 one time. After that, those circumstances can't be replicated again, for better or worse. If that's the case, then is it really possible to ever reach those same heights that those games were able to provide? I think there are a couple methods you can use to try to reignite that flame. The one thing I've tried the most, and what I believe to be the most prevalent, is simply replaying those games. I've replayed Breath of the Wild multiple times over the past few years in hopes of recapturing that same feeling I experienced when I first stepped out onto the Great Plateau. That feeling of seeing this seemingly endless world, and the excitement of being totally unaware of what was around the next corner, just pure authentic exploration. But that feeling doesn't really exist anymore. The reason for this is obvious. You've seen it all before. You've climbed every mountain, beat every boss, explored every field, and broken every weapon. I mean, that last one didn't take very long. You're trying to get a first-time experience from a game that you're not playing for the first time, which doesn't really make sense. It's kinda like watching a video you like without being subscribed. So what if instead you tried to replicate this feeling by playing new games that were based on those old games? Well, that wouldn't work either. Now, before I show any footage, I'm not saying these games are bad by any means. They're all excellent games, so don't take any of this the wrong way. Blossom Tales wears its inspiration on its sleeve. It's a top-down game about an unlikely hero exploring dungeons and using the power they find to save the kingdom from some evil force. This game is very obviously inspired by Animal Crossing. You could also kinda make the case that it has some Zelda-like influences, but that one's not as concrete. And to be honest, this isn't much of a problem. Most art is inspired by something, and games are no exception. The only real issue here is that if you play this game in an attempt to feel the same way you did when you played Link to the Past 20 years ago, it's not gonna work. The flaw in this method of recreating the past is that you're comparing a game to an unrealistic standard that it can never really reach. Even if Blossom Tales was as good as Link to the Past, it wouldn't matter because of what we talked about earlier, circumstances. Link to the Past was a magical game not just because it's great, but because for many people it was their first adventure through Hyrule. That's not something you can replicate. So, as much as I hate to say it, it's impossible. You can never get that feeling back. You can try to replay old games, but it's not the same feeling as it was the first time. You can try to play games that attempt to recapture the magic by imitating it, but that works just as well. See, the root issue here is that you're chasing a phantom. You're pursuing something that simply doesn't exist anymore. And you really don't want to do that because in doing so there's a significantly more dangerous problem that creeps its way in. I mentioned earlier how I played Breath of the Wild over and over because I wanted to revive that feeling I had 5 years ago when I first played the game. But I really shouldn't have done that. Instead of searching for something that was already in the past, something that's already gone, what if instead I spent that time trying out new games, new stories, new experiences? What did I miss when I was so busy aimlessly wandering through the same fields in hopes that I'd rediscover something that just wasn't there? I mean, there are so many brilliant games to discover, so many different stories to be told, new experiences to have and memories to make. So if you're like me, and you've been trying to recapture those feelings from that elusive age, maybe instead appreciate that they happened, never forget them, and move on to the next great adventure. I can't promise you that whatever waits around the corner will be better. Maybe you'll never top your number one, but it's that maybe that's so important. We don't know what's out there, and there's only one way to find out. And speaking of new experiences, this video is home to plenty of games that you do not want to miss, so check it out.